Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. Hope you're all having a great start to your Thursday. News 8 Digital Reporter Matt Jaworowski is here, and he joins us on the Live Desk to discuss the latest installment in his series on redlining and its impacts here in West Michigan as part of Black History Month. Matt, thank you for coming on the Live Desk today.
Yep, thanks for bringing me on, Phil.
Yes, no, absolutely. And of course, you came on last week to talk about the first part in your 4-part series. Well, now the second part came out on Sunday, and we're here to talk a little bit more about that. Again, this is a 4-part series coming out every single Sunday throughout the month of February, and Matt's going to be joining us every week following that story to kind of discuss a little bit more in depth, talk about the stories a little bit more. I know that a lot of people have a lot of questions, so if you've got any, please go ahead and drop them in the comment section below if you're watching us on Facebook. And if you haven't checked out the first 2 parts in this series, I encourage everybody to head on over to woodtv.com and check those out. I have linked the second part that is also linked to the first part, so you can find both parts right now. If you are watching us on Facebook, it's down in the comment section and in the description box. So Matt, I guess just getting started, can you just tell us a little bit more about this second part? You know, the first part dealt a lot with explaining what redlining is and how it came to be in Grand Rapids. This second part, though, touch on a little bit, takes it a step further. If you could just kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So the second part of the story, we kind of really dug into the map. Like you said, the first part was a focus on just explaining what redlining is. It was this practice that came out in the 1930s. It actually came out of a New Deal program, the Homeowners Loan Corporation. After years of helping banks pick up the pieces for their mortgages after the Great Depression, they went back and tried to find as many efficient ways as possible to help these banks with some safety nets, minimize risk for the mortgages they gave out. Those redlined maps, effectively called redline maps because the worst neighborhoods, the highest risk, were marked in red, and that just happened to be where Black populations lived. Grand Rapids maps saw that, just like hundreds of other cities across the country. And so the second piece focused on what those maps mean. We went into the numbers as far as how many A-grade neighborhoods Grand Rapids had, how many B, C, and D grade neighborhoods, what type of people made up those neighborhoods, and then how we still see those patterns playing out today. There's still a lot of demographic similarities. Obviously the city is much more integrated now than it was in the 1930s. But even as of 2019, 4 of the 7 D grade or the lowest graded neighborhoods in the city are still minority majority, more than 50% people of color, even though people of color do not make up even close to 50% of the Grand Rapids population. But those numbers, we see lines in other areas too. Adverse health impacts and how those lower graded neighborhoods are closer to industrial zones, have more concrete, not as much a green area, how all those little details make impacts on people's everyday lives, and it's disproportionately impacting our communities of color, even now.
Mm-hmm. Right, and one thing about this second part in the series that I found truly fascinating was you taking a deeper dive really into looking at segregation even before redlining became this practice in West Michigan. What was sort of something interesting that you found while doing a bunch of research regarding, I know the series is about redlining, but you also had to take a look back and where redlining even came from.
Right, I mean, we dug into the process of how the HOLC brought up their maps. Doing research for actually a previous project, I did an investigation into Grand Rapids furniture history, and I actually learned a lot about just how the city was formed. And so obviously even before the 1937 HOLC map, the redlined map, the city was segregated. When the city was first formed, it was more obviously money. It controlled how much property and where you could buy property. Moving into the end of the 19th century, Grand Rapids grew because of the furniture industry. The population soared mostly because of European immigrants. When those people moved to the city, this is pre-automobile, neighborhoods are extremely tight, extremely close, and most of those immigrants, they moved into the same neighborhood so they can keep parts of their culture alive, attend the churches they want to go to. just be around people that I think they would say they are more comfortable with, because moving to a brand new country, moving across the ocean, I'm sure you're going to try to grab onto anything familiar that you can find. And then redlining kind of took all that and exacerbated it. We'll dig into that a little more in the next piece, talking about the city's black belt. That was really caused by redlining. We had the lower end neighborhoods where only people of color, they couldn't find housing outside of those neighborhoods. So that in 1937, when the maps were first drawn, there were still lots of other white populations there as well, but by the 50s and 60s, they had all moved out of those neighborhoods, most of them out of the city. I know Paul Phillips has a quote in the upcoming piece that talks about just blocks and blocks where every resident is black, highlighting segregation and the need for fair housing practices to give black families the opportunity to find better housing, make better investments, and live in what they would consider a nicer neighborhood.
Right, and another thing I did really enjoy about this specific piece was kind of taking a look at the then and the now of redlining and its impacts. But did anything majorly stand out to you when taking a look at sort of the differences or similarities you did when you did that comparison?
No, nothing that stood out in a shocking way. One of the things that we were able to find as the Black Belt was formed post-redlining, post-1937, the Black Belt and the black population of the city really expanded south much more than it did north. There's no real reason for that other than that's where those first handful of neighborhoods were on the southeast side of the city. But the population expanded a lot further south than it did north. That was something that was a little surprising. There are other things on the maps, like even today we have neighborhoods in Grand Rapids that are more affluent areas, and they are still more than 90% white. These are things that as we live in the city we kind of understand, and we see those things. So not entirely surprising.
Right. All right, and you kind of touched on it a little bit about this coming Sunday's piece. I know I have a lot of questions. I'm very excited to read it, Matt, and we have a ton of people watching right now that are also going to be very interested in kind of seeing a little bit more and hearing a little bit more of a preview on it. If you wouldn't mind just kind of letting the people know what you've got in the works coming up this Sunday.
So this week's piece will be, I hate using the phrase deep dive, but I use it way too often. Looking into the Auburn Hills neighborhood on the northeast side of Grand Rapids. It's a story that's been told before. But I don't think to quite the depth that we're giving this story. Digging through, the entire process took about 2 years, and digging through 2 years worth of press reports and other interviews that the city archives and the Grand Rapids Public Library have on file. Being able to tell that story of the 4 investors who really put their own equity on the line to establish that neighborhood, fighting not just city officials and many members of the white community that didn't want that sale to go through and allow that development to happen. But also talking to one of the survivors. I talked to Cheryl Frank. She's the daughter of one of the 4 investors. And I also talked to a woman. Her name is Barbara Law. I think she provided some really interesting perspective to the story. She's the daughter of Evangeline Lambert, who was one of the city commissioners at the time of all that. She kind of went on to explain how, because her mother was seen as opposing the sale, that she was miscast as a racist, and so we explore that. Her feelings about her mother was misjudged. She went on to explain a lot of things about her mom and how local politics worked at the time and how she feels she was unjustly characterized. So that stuff will all be in the pieces coming Sunday.
Well, we definitely look forward to reading about it, Matt. I just want to remind everybody watching that, of course, the first 2 parts of this 4-part series in Matt's redlining series in honor of Black History Month are live right now over on our website, woodtv.com. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can find a link to those stories right now in the description box and in the comment section. Matt, thank you again for joining us, and I do want to remind everybody also that next Wednesday at noon, mark your calendars, Matt will be back on the live desk to talk about this upcoming piece as well. So Matt, we look forward to seeing you then. We look forward to the piece on Sunday. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in to the latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Penarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.